Welcome to Forensic Friday.
Where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Well, hello.
Hello, friend.
I would say long time no see, but we just spent an entire week together.
And the day. Today was fun
And the
too.
day. And all day and all afternoon.
I just laid on your couch most of the day
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
for like 2 hours.
Had the best time at conference. We have to tell everybody. Like we presented on female offenders. We hard launched the podcast, which we were going to do the official launch last week initially, but
Yes.
Nat was all antsy and just had to just full send in what, April?
April.
So I'm actually really grateful for that now because we've established ourselves a bit before last week, and last week was stressful enough with presenting.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if we could have done all of it.
I don't think we could have.
Oh, that would have been so stressful.
I was so excited by just how the presentation was received and all of the incredible therapists and law enforcement folks and client advocates that were there, victim advocates that were there. It was just a really cool, 500 people that we got to hang out with for a week, which was awesome.
I know. It was so fun. I was so nervous to present, but we did so well.
We did good. I gotta say, we did pretty good. We were very nervous.
Yes.
Not more than me.
Yes.
Now
I was like, I don't even know how to describe it. The next day, all I can say is I don't get like what Brene Brown calls vulnerability hangovers very often.
Yes.
And the next day I was like, I cannot show my face to any of these people.
Oh, I know. You were feeling exposed.
It was the worst vulnerability hangover I've had in a long time.
Well, I think, we were nervous and they told us the day before we presented, hey, you guys are in the biggest breakout room because we had one of the bigger sessions, which even made me a little nervous. And I wasn't nervous.
Let me even say how it was said to me. I go up to our check-in table and Taylor comes up to me and she goes, so just so you know, you're in the biggest breakout room because you have the most people signed up for your session. No pressure.
And I was like, came up to me like, absolutely not. Like, what are we doing? What did you get me into? You're the worst.
Like, what's happening? I think I said I hate you.
Many times, many times. And so we went into a bit of a panic, stayed up most of the night working on perfecting everything.
But what I will say, when I say that to my people, when I tell people, at least 99% of the time, when I say, oh my gosh, I hate you so much, it's actually because I love you so much and you're pushing me to do something that's really hard. So the last time I said that to someone, it was my sister-in-law, Brittany, when she was training me for my show. Yep. And it was the week before my show and she was training me so hard. And I looked at her and I was like, I actually think I hate you.
Well, our entire relationship has been us pushing each other one way or another, which I'm super grateful for because I think we take more risks together than we would separately. Yeah. I love being in the boat with you. So if I'm going to be nervous at the front of a classroom with somebody like freaking out, I'd rather do that with you than anybody else.
Yeah. Well, and we just make jokes about it and then we move on.
Absolutely. And it was great. I'm also just grateful for the quality of humans that we interacted with for the entire week. Everybody was so kind and patient and generous with us the whole week. And then freaking podcast blows up for a whole
blows up.
You guys, we are beside ourselves. Every time we check it, it's going up. We were so excited to hit 2,000, but today has doubled yesterday, which doubled the day before. So thank you. Thank you for following the podcast, for being a part of this with us. It's so humbling. Like I get a little emotional when I think about it because it's something that we were so excited to do and it's so vulnerable, and to have people actually want to listen to something that's so important to us is just incredible. We're just pumped. So thank you so much. And please, 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 please follow us on Instagram. Please give us a 5-star rating if you love the podcast. Follow us on
Yeah.
the podcast. It just helps us. It helps us as we're building. It helps us know where we're at with things. And
Yes.
wouldn't you know, comfort hollered at your girl.
I know. We're both wearing our stuff.
Well, I'm wearing my second one. I now have 5 colors.
I was gonna say you ordered like 7. I have 2.
Yes.
I have another discount, but I have this one that I'm wearing, our dark one that we've matchy. And
Yes.
then I got my pink one, and that's coming this week, I think. And you have
Yeah.
like 1,000 colors.
I have peach and yellow coming. And then I
And
got
then
pink sweatpants so I can match you with the sweatpants.
you should just get the pink sweatshirt too. I don't know why you didn't just get all of the things.
I think they were sold out. They're selling out of the pastels.
Oh, I believe it because they're so cool.
I know, they're wonderful. And
They're
again,
so sweet.
comfort, we've posted the link, but we're telling you officially, if you want to look as cool as us, and Lord knows we are the coolest.
We are.
We're the coolest.
People are gonna stop listening to our podcast after that. I'm just kidding.
I wouldn't blame them. We
I
have
would.
we have a 15% off discount code that we
Yes.
have on our social media. We'll keep posting it for you guys. But it's totally worth it and you can match us. And I even matched my dog. I got one for Honey.
Oh my gosh, she did get one for her dog, honey.
So I think that's all of our updates. People have sent us story ideas. We love that. I got
Yes.
messages on Nextdoor with people wanting different things. I mean, it's been
Yeah.
great. And that helps us.
YouTube,
YouTube. I mean, we've been getting a lot of
text
stuff. So
messages. Yeah. Yep.
help us help you. What you guys want to hear about, we want to talk about. So
Yeah.
send us your ideas.
So, Janine,
Yeah.
Saturday, we're coming home.
Yep.
This joyful experience at the conference that I was so nervous about, and you were apparently super nervous about, but you didn't tell me. And we come home to this crazy news that there was an attempted assassination on Donald Trump.
That's right.
Pretty wild. So we are actually going to dive into that plus some, y'all. I'm kind of assuming most individuals that subscribe to our podcast from the US have heard about this, but potentially some people who are not from here haven't heard about this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little bit of a play-by-play.
Well, and also, I mean, so much is still coming out about it. We've been updating each other as we see things, and it seems like it's changing a fair bit. Like there's a basic timeline, but then there's kind of some other pieces they're still figuring out.
Exactly. We'll get into it, my friends. All right. So on the date of July 13th, there was an attempted assassination on former president slash presidential candidate, Mr. Donald Trump. The guy's name who shot at Donald Trump is Thomas Crooks, and he was a 20-year-old, which to me, honestly, Janine, is insane that he was 20.
See, it's just a baby. I mean,
Just a
he
baby.
looks like a baby.
He looks like he's 15.
I know he looks like a high school kid.
Well, he just graduated like 2 years ago. There is speculation that this was a suicide mission. However, sources say that he told his boss that he was going to return back to work Monday, and he worked, I think he was a cook or worked in the kitchen at a assisted living home or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I saw that too. And it sounded like he took the day off, but like you said, was planning to go back to work, which is interesting. Or at least that's what he told people, whatever.
Right. Maybe he didn't want anyone to speculate anything.
Yeah.
So here is a little bit of a play-by-play, and Janine, jump in. So here's a little bit of what happened. A lot of the sources say some different stuff. So for our listeners, if you're listening to this and you're like, that's not correct, I hear you. I get it. I looked at a bunch of different sources, and there's just some discrepancies, but this is generally what happened. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Crooks actually went to the rally, I believe went inside the rally without his stuff. So went through the metal detectors.
Mm-hmm.
and then left the rally. So, and this was before Trump was there or on stage. So this was
Yep.
like almost 30 minutes before.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah. So he entered in, then left before it started. And then he was spotted by law enforcement walking around the building, looking at the roof that he ended up on, and also looking through a rangefinder. And
Mm.
it sounds like the rangefinder at this time was not attached to a gun.
Mm-mm.
So, for those of you guys who don't know what a rangefinder is, I'm surrounded by hunters, so I've known what a rangefinder is for quite some time. But if you don't know, it is a device that hunters put on their guns to measure the distance of their shot,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
There was a photo taken of him that was sent out to other law enforcement stating to just keep an eye on him because he was a suspicious guy. So this is still like 20 minutes before everything happened.
Well, yeah, and it's so weird that he had the rangefinder. Like you would be going, okay, that looks like something that's usually on a gun, even if somebody's not carrying a gun. It's weird,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe they thought, hey, it's a quirky guy with something that's like binoculars. I mean, who knows?
Right. Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yep. So then witnesses say that they saw him scaling the building that he ended up on, getting on top of the roof and setting up an AR style rifle.
Mm-hmm.
He also had a detonator in his pocket. They found it after they had shot him to set off like handmade explosive devices that were in his car that was parked nearby, which is interesting.
It is interesting. And I couldn't tell if his car was parked by people or just in the parking lot. It's a little bit hard to know if he was
Right.
trying to have more victims or if he just wanted to blow up his car as like part of his whole plan,
Thing.
whatever. His
Yeah.
whole thing, yeah.
Yeah. As we move forward, a police officer climbed up onto the roof to assess the situation and confront the young man. He then pointed a gun at the officer, and the officer got down for safety and then fell off the roof. He fell like 8 feet.
Oh, geez.
I know. It didn't
And
say if
what a
he.
scary job that was to be the
Right.
one trying to climb and stick your head up there to like, you know what I mean? Like that's really,
Right.
I can be hard on law enforcement sometimes because it's easy. It's easy to kind of pick at things later that didn't go well. But
Yep.
that was freaking scary to try to climb up on that roof and somebody's up there with a rifle. Like, geez.
Right. And points it at you.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, okay, no, I am going to duck for cover. And then, he happened to fall off. So he was unable to then re engage with him to
Yeah.
try to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
So then he turned the gun back towards where Trump was and fired many shots, right?
Yeah.
I read 3. There's speculation that there was like 8 to 9.
Yeah.
I don't know what were his shots and what were the other snipers. I think they just fired one probably.
Yeah.
I don't know, but there was many shots fired and 3 of them hit individuals. One being Trump, it grazed his ear.
Yeah.
2 individuals got shot that lived but were in critical condition. And then one man got shot who ended up losing his life. So his name was Corey Comfortor. And we're going to come back to him later on when we get to the heart piece of this. So that's kind of a quick play-by-play. Do you have any other thoughts to that, Janine, before I move on to this next part?
Yeah, I mean, good job. I mean, I think it is just like rapidly kind of changing. The basics are staying the same, but there's so many pieces. You sent me a video earlier that we may or may not post on social media. We'll see what we want to do.
Yeah.
I think the thing that hit me was just how scary this was. And it just it was really chaotic. And it seems like the security, whatever the situation was, they were kind of on their heels, which is not where you want to be.
Yeah.
And it ended up being, almost a worst case scenario. It was for one person who lost their life and 2 people who were shot. Well, I did read he had an awful lot of ammunition. And so we don't really know what he had planned, what the intention was, but he did actually have quite a bit of ammunition and the explosive devices. So
yeah.
It's frightening.
Yeah. It's just so scary. And I think, that was what you and I can even like hear in our voices. We were so excited at the conference and even talking about it right now. We're both like,
ugh,
heavy. It's really heavy. It hits differently. So there was so much happening. Obviously, we both have a lot of thoughts about this.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little bit of information on the shooter.
And again, we want to be careful to not give these shooters, these offenders,
Mhm.
like credit or clout or whatever. But it is really helpful to
Mhm.
think about the psychology of some of these people because
Yes.
some of these things can be prevented, intercepted, whatever, if we see the warning signs. So that's the lens that Nat and I are looking at
Absolutely.
it through is really the background of this guy and his psychology, which is what we're going to be talking about.
Yes, yes. No clout, there's no, for lack of better words, praise to any of these individuals who've committed
No.
these crimes. However, it is important for us to talk about warning
Hmm.
signs. And, again, we've said this in other episodes, our heart is prevention,
Yes.
right? And so the more we talk about some of potentially what might have been happening, we can maybe be a little bit more aware when we see some of these warning signs.
Well, and I was thinking too today, because we've been talking so much about how to approach this, and we
Mhm.
wanted to speak on it because I think these are the kinds of things that we envisioned talking about in our podcast.
Yeah.
It's our entire job. Our entire job is treatment, right? But it is risk assessment and prevention. That is
Mhm.
essentially the type of providers that we are.
Yep.
And so this is absolutely kind of in our wheelhouse to be looking at this, but that doesn't make it any less sad or heavy.
Exactly. Exactly. So, a little bit about Mr. Crooks. Again, he was 20 years old. And I will start with his motive was unclear. So even now, we still don't have that much information on
Hmm.
why he felt so inclined to do this.
Hmm.
So it was his father's AR. It was his father's AR style rifle. And his dad isn't sure why he took it either. Some information on him that was gathered by like other students and other teachers and people who have worked with him. He was quite bullied in school. He was bullied pretty badly and he was super quiet in high school. Other students said he was quote unquote a little off and wore different types of clothing, like military style of clothing,
Mm.
but he was not military affiliated. And I don't think his immediate family was either from what I
Mm.
saw. I could be wrong, but I don't think that they were.
Okay.
So just interesting. A big thing that I read numerous times and also heard on that Hulu special that I watched was that he was not on any radar, right? Like he wasn't on the FBI's radar. There was no Secret Service watch list. He wasn't
Mm.
on any Secret Service watch list.
Mm-mm.
Nothing. They found maybe some conspiracy theory type of stuff, but nothing that like screamed he's a national threat.
Mm.
According to sources, he was super smart. He graduated high school with honors and
Mm.
then graduated from a 2-year college with his associate's degree in engineering and then was expected to go to the University of Pittsburgh this fall.
Oh, wow.
So
So he had plans
he had
for his
plans.
life. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, was heading to a 4-year school, super smart, had things going for him, like
Yeah.
really, really had a lot of things coming up for him. So, let's just take a minute to kind of assess what we may think about what was going on for him. So, based on the very little we know, Janine, what do you suspect could have been going on?
I mean, I don't think we can ignore the potential impact of COVID. So if he's
Mhm.
20 now, he was 16 during COVID, having a
Mhm.
really rough time in high school. I ran an adolescent DBT group with girls all
Mhm.
through COVID, and we met online on Thursday nights, every Thursday night at
Mhm.
7:30.
Mhm.
And it was rough. I mean, I think it was a very, very rough time to be a teenager. It doesn't explain his
No.
behavior, but it could be a contributing factor.
Yeah.
I always wonder in a case like this what the motivation is in terms of,
Mhm.
it can be anything from mental health like psychosis, where
Mhm.
you're having a hallucination. We know hallucinations can be what we call command hallucinations, where the auditory or visual hallucination is actually
Yep.
telling you to do something.
Yep.
And those can be really intense and overwhelming and can sort of compel people to do certain things. all the way down to it could be he was just depressed and had really strong opinions and
Mhm.
wanted to make a name for himself or wanted to
Yeah.
impact history in some way.
Yep. That's where my brain went to. Is interesting when you said the psychosis piece, because I hadn't thought of that.
Hmm.
My brain went to depression,
Hmm.
isolation, quiet. He was bullied, which you and I both know for so many of these young shooters, there is a history of being bullied in
Yeah.
their life. And then also that thought of wanting to make a name for himself in some way.
Hmm. I hypothesized early on that maybe he was not very intelligent. So it's interesting
Mhm.
to read that he actually was bright and did well in school because he did not do well in like a marksman class or something like that, is one of the things that I read. Like he was not a good shot, which
Mhm.
I mean is clearly still true.
Right.
One of the things you
Right.
commented, having hunters in your family and stuff, like, that's not a terrible distance with a
Mm-mm.
pretty significant firearm and a scope. So
Right.
the fact that he missed that shot, I mean, a lot of things came together probably to contribute, including Trump turning his head, I think was a
Yes.
contributing factor. But I kind of was like, well, I mean, if he knows he can't shoot, what the hell is he doing? But, it sounds like he actually had at least average intelligence and did fine in high school.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because he was a part of a gun club
Mm-hmm.
at a shooting range. And it does say that he was about 147 yards away from Trump. So when I was talking to a few of my friends slash my husband who hunts,
Yeah.
that's not that far with a scope,
Mm-hmm.
right? You and I've both had our experiences at shooting ranges and
Mm-hmm.
using these devices, and it's hard to miss with a scope. So
Yeah.
it's just interesting. There was also some information on he was registered as a Republican, but then donated a little bit of money to a more liberal organization. So again, it goes with like no one really
We don't
knows
know.
what was going on for him and the
Mm.
motive as to why he did this. There's no, from what we know, like no note. He didn't tell anyone.
Mm-mm. And we may never know, and they may find a manifesto on his hard drive that will get released at some point. Like we just don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that would be our initial armchair expert opinions on some of the things that might be driving this, right?
Yes, yes. So that's the play by play of what happened. We'll get to the heart stuff later, but this episode is, not just necessarily about this situation. This is just, a obviously super recent situation that happened that brought up all this other stuff.
Well, we were talking with my husband, Garrett, our executive producer, about what are we doing? What are we saying? What are we talking about? We want to say something about this. It feels relevant. We were talking about it anyway, so we might as well put it on here.
Yeah.
And Garrett started bringing up all of these past assassination attempts on presidents. And I was like,
Yes.
it'd be kind of interesting to look at a couple of those,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
In light of all of this and just a different kind of focus and maybe a little bit of a distraction in some ways too. I'm going to take us back in time
Okay.
first to Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, okay. Teddy Roosevelt.
Uh-huh. I had completely forgotten that someone actually tried to assassinate Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
I literally forgot. I don't know where some of this history goes. People joke about having a hollow leg when they can like eat a lot and not
Yeah.
gain an ounce. And I feel like I have a hollow brain sometimes. Like there's a lot in there. I just don't know when it
Where it
got put
is.
in there and I can't always
Yeah.
access it. So
Yeah.
basically, I'm going to give you the rundown and then some really interesting pieces. So on October 14th, 1912.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, hello, long time
Um,
ago. A
a
former,
minute
I mean,
ago.
we're over 100 years ago. Isn't that insane?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Former saloon keeper John Schrank attempted to assassinate former US President Theodore Roosevelt while he was campaigning for presidency in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So again, campaign trail. He was
Hmm.
not the acting president when this happened.
Hmm.
Teddy Roosevelt became president because the president before him, William McKinley, was assassinated.
Oh, wow.
I know.
I didn't know that.
I know. So William McKinley was assassinated in 1901. So Teddy Roosevelt served the remainder of that term, so 3 years, 6 months. Then he was elected to a full term in the 1904 election. And then he refused to run in 1908 because there was the tradition established by George Washington that no president should serve more than 2 terms as the US president. So at that time, this was not an amendment in the Constitution, but it was kind of like an understood thing. Like George Washington, man, he started this whole thing and he said nobody should be president for more than 8 years. So
Hmm.
Roosevelt backed off and endorsed William Howard Taft, who
Hmm.
was his Secretary of War,
Hmm.
to be the president. And so Taft went on, he won the nomination, became the president. Okay.
Okay.
Roosevelt in 1912 is like, I don't like the job that Taft's doing. I'm coming back.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So he ran against Taft. So in 1912, when all of this went down, that is why he was campaigning. So he was technically campaigning for a third term
Oh my gosh.
because he didn't like Taft and it split the Republican Party. So
And
there
back
was,
then they could run for more than two?
they could, because it wasn't part of the Constitution yet. It is now.
Okay.
It wasn't
Okay.
part of the
Okay.
Constitution yet, but it was kind of like, I guess, frowned upon. I don't know. It was kind of like a gentleman's agreement. Like, hey, we
Like,
won't,
don't do it, but you
just don't do
can.
it. Like George Washington didn't do it, so maybe we shouldn't do it. But it wasn't like an
Okay.
official thing.
Right.
So this split the Republican Party, and it was very bitter, which is interesting given what's happening now.
Yes.
So there was a progressive party that they named the Bull Moose Party, and that was Roosevelt. So
Okay.
Roosevelt was like, I don't like how Taft is doing things. I'm going to do my own thing. And he was considered fairly liberal and reform. And then Taft was kind of the more conservative wing, all within the Republican Party. Okay.
Okay.
Basically, when it came down to the assassination attempt, he was addressing a group of people. Again, October 14th, 1912. He's addressing a group of people in Wisconsin. And he was kind of getting ready to get into his speech. I don't think he was very far into his speech when Schrank basically fired on him. The bullet lodged
Hmm.
in his chest, but first it went through his steel eyeglass case and through the 50-page thick speech that he had written for that event.
What?
The speech was titled Progressive Cause Greater Than Any Individual, and he was carrying it in his jacket pocket.
Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt is a bona fide badass. Okay, so you have to hear what he did. Okay, so this freaking guy was apparently an experienced hunter and anatomist, so he understood how the body worked. And because he wasn't coughing up blood, he knew it wasn't in his lung. So he decides, I'm not going to the hospital. I have a speech to give. He freaking gives his speech. So he
That,
stands there. First of all, they tackle the guy. Okay, so the guy takes a shot. They tackle him. This is
yes.
the olden days. They're pummeling him, I'm quite sure. Roosevelt was like, don't hurt him
Hmm.
because he could have been like lynched.
Yeah.
If he'd been in the South, it literally says he would have been lynched if they were in the South. And they
That is wild.
suspect that maybe part of why he did this in Wisconsin is because the laws were different than like in the South if this had happened in the South. So anyway,
Dang.
essentially, they get the shooter, they hold him down. He actually talks to the shooter. He like gets
What?
on his level and is sort of like, why'd you do that, bro? And the guy doesn't say anything. And the police take him away, the crowd's booing him, and Roosevelt looked at him and said, "You poor creature." Told the officers take him away, whatever, finishes his speech like the badass that he is. And he says to the crowd, "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose."
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is spicy.
So that was the attempt. He got better. I think it took like 2 weeks. It's interesting to note that the other people running did not
Hmm.
campaign. So Taft did not campaign, and I think there was potentially a third party person. They stopped campaigning while he was recovering those 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Again, like
Hmm.
gentlemen's agreements, like you're recovering, we're not going to keep campaigning, whatever. And so Roosevelt went on and did his thing, you know?
Hmm.
It's just crazy. Isn't that crazy?
That's so nuts.
And so it penetrated into his chest muscle, but just like Roosevelt thought, it didn't hit his lung. The bullet stayed in his chest for the rest of his life. And
What?
yeah, they didn't get it out because President McKinley, who was killed before
Uh-huh.
him,
Uh-huh.
had an infection because they went to pull the bullet out and it got gangrene or whatever, it got infected, and that's how that president died. And so they decided we're just going to leave this bullet in there.
Wow.
So it was in him his whole life. And he used to joke with people that he doesn't mind it any more than if it was in his pocket. He could care less. So Roosevelt just kind of a badass. The
That's so random.
the story on the shooter, he was born in Bavaria and
Okay.
immigrated to the US when he was like 9-ish. His parents died shortly after they got to the US, and then his
Mm-hmm.
aunt and uncle that took him in also died. And then he lost his girlfriend. His girlfriend died in an accident on New York's East River. So I don't know, it was like a boating accident or something. So
Okay.
he was super depressed, just ill, mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
And they really just basically called him insane. He spent
Wow.
29 years after his conviction. He was found insane, so he wasn't technically convicted, but he was put in an asylum, essentially, a criminally insane state hospital, for 29
Dang.
years and before he died of pneumonia.
Dang.
Teddy Roosevelt was not pleased with the insanity plea and
Well,
really
yeah,
tried
I wouldn't be
to,
either.
exactly. It's like, hey, he was smart enough to like come after me, so I don't know that he's that insane, but he ultimately was hospitalized. So that's Teddy freaking Roosevelt. Thoughts?
Yeah, bona fide badass.
Bona fide. And I have to say, I don't know, I don't care what y'all think about Trump or Biden. That's not what this is about. Trump, like
No.
putting his fist in the air is pretty gnarly. Presidents are gnarly.
Some of them.
Historically, they've been pretty gnarly, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I
Some
mean,
of
I
them.
wouldn't want to be the president. That would be like a really stressful job. I wouldn't want to have that job.
Yeah, absolutely not. But yeah, I mean, still giving the speech,
Yeah.
Trump getting up and saying fight, fight, fight.
Yeah.
Like,
Intense.
pretty dang tough. I would be like crawling off that stage or saying, I'm
100%.
not giving my speech today. I got to go to the hospital and
I
check
would have
this
peed
out.
my pants, first of all. Peed my pants. And been so freaked out and whatever. And everybody was super freaked out. But I think when you come into an office like that and you're in front of people all the time and you have to kind of have that face on, I maybe they're just made of some sterner stuff. I don't know. So the second one we're going to talk about, because this guy had a sense
Turner
of humor,
stuff.
and I appreciate this, okay?
Okay.
Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna like tell the story and then we're gonna talk a little bit about this guy. I want to take you back now to March 21st, 1981. So Ronald Reagan
Okay.
took office on January 20th of 1981. So he's a newbie president. This is like
Okay.
month two. Okay. On the 21st of March in 1981, he went to the Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. He looks up at the presidential box above the stage where Lincoln was sitting when he was killed. And he thinks to himself, ooh, something could happen to me. He has this
Interesting.
thought, like, I know there are people here to keep me safe, but he felt, quote unquote, a curious sensation and actually
Hmm.
did think about his own safety. So that's March 21st, 1981. Okay.
Okay.
We're going to jump ahead then to March 30th, 1981. So
Okay.
this is 9 days later. 9 days
Right.
later. Okay. He's walking out of a hotel, the Washington Hilton, which
Mhm.
was considered a pretty safe place for presidents. Ironically, they had like a hallway called the President's Walk that was
Hmm.
built after the 1963 assassination of John F. Kennedy. So this hotel had a very specific walkway that was supposed to be really safe for presidents if they did an address or something. The
Hmm.
Secret Service usually had Reagan wear a bulletproof vest, but on this particular day, he was not, because all he had to do was get from the president's walk, the end of the president's walk, into the limo. So we're talking 30 feet.
Okay.
He only had to get 30 feet. Okay.
Okay.
So Secret Service allowed an unscreened group within 15 feet of him. They screened the heck out of everybody, but there's this one group that they allowed to be there. There were some reporters in the group, but there were just kind of a group of folks behind a rope line, kind of just off to the side
Yeah.
of him a bit.
Yeah.
The shooter crouched down. I'm gonna get to the shooter in a minute. His name is John Hinckley
Okay.
Jr. John Hinckley Jr. crouches and fires off 6 shots in 1.7 seconds. And he
Dang.
misses the president with all 6 shots. Now, other people
What?
are hit with all of those shots, which I'll get into.
Right. Right.
But he didn't hit the president directly. He hit some of the Secret Service guys, like in the head. None of them
Mm.
died, which is incredible. Some of them had very serious, lasting issues, including the press secretary, like very serious physical issues. But none of them died, to my knowledge. Oh, and I should say about the Secret Service, there were guys like literally standing, arms out, legs out. They shoved him into the limo. I mean, these guys like put themselves
Mm.
between the shooter and the president. Also, there was a guy named Alfred Antonucci. Okay.
Okay.
He just beat the shit out of Hinckley. He decides, he decides, what are you doing? And he just clocks him, literally clocked him, and they beat him up. They beat him up. Him and another they were like labor bosses, labor leaders. There were a couple in
What?
the crowd, and they beat him. They just straight up beat him and held him.
Well, you shoot at the president, you're gonna
That's right.
potentially get your ass whooped.
That is what happened.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the final bullet actually ricocheted off the limo that was bulletproof, okay? But it ricocheted and it hit the president once under his arm, and it stopped less than an inch from his heart.
Wow.
Now, this shooter used explosive rounds, but only one of the rounds actually exploded.
Oh, dang.
When they went in at the hospital, so they take Reagan. Reagan's acting casual, okay? He's just like, I'm hit. He kind of told the people he needed to go to the hospital, but it was being super calm. They
Yeah.
took him 4 minutes to the hospital. He freaking walks into the hospital. Just walks in, ain't no thing, right? I mean, he got, a bullet in his chest, an inch from his heart, but we're cool. Whatever. I'm telling you, sterner stuff. These presidents are made of some stern stuff.
I know.
So he walks in, but then he kind of buckles, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Nancy Reagan rushes to the hospital. He tells her, honey, I forgot to duck, borrowing like a boxer's line. Like the dude's jokes. He's got jokes for days. Okay. I mean, so he loses
Ah.
half of his blood. He's in the operating room. They did exploratory surgery to just put the guy back together, And
Mhm.
he says he literally takes the oxygen mask off of his face and tells the people in the operating room, I hope you're all Republicans. And there was a
Oh,
Democrat in the room that looked at him and said, today, Mr. President, we're all Republicans.
oh.
I know. Doesn't that just like touch your heart? This is why we have to tell some different stories. We need some different stories. Okay.
Yes, especially for back when, I mean, politics have always been a little chaotic, but
Yes.
like that's unification in human beings.
Yes, I know. And I'm just like, okay, I can get on board with these people, right? We're saving the
Yes.
president. We don't care if we're Republicans or Democrats. We really just want this.
Like today we are for you.
Today we just want you to survive, Mr. President, right? Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about John Hinckley Jr. because this dude is weird, okay, and mentally. He was obsessed with then child actress Jodie Foster. John Hinckley Jr. did this whole thing just to impress actress Jodie Foster.
That is wild.
Yes. So he got obsessed with this film, Taxi Driver, which I've never seen, but apparently he watched it 15 times and overly identified with Robert De Niro's character, who saved a child prostitute played by Jodie Foster.
Oh boy.
That character tried to assassinate a U.S. senator running for president in the film.
Oh, okay.
So he even enrolled in a writing class at Yale when he heard that Foster was at Yale. I mean, this freaking dude, this is
Like,
why
stop.
stalking is a felony. This is terrible. Foster was very afraid, but you wouldn't necessarily think he's going to kill a president. I think he just was
Right.
kind of a known stalker of Jodie Foster's, right?
Okay.
Okay. So the dude starts stalking President Jimmy Carter. And I don't know if they knew. I think this is more retrospect, but he was basically stalking President Jimmy Carter, and he was impressed and surprised by how close he could get to the president. At one event, he was only a foot away from Jimmy Carter.
What?
And he's thinking, like, this isn't hard, right?
Yeah.
This isn't hard at all. So then he gets picked up at the Nashville airport with a firearm, and his parents put him in psychiatric care. So
Okay.
he was put in psychiatric care. When he was released from psychiatric care, I- within the year leading up to this, he turned all
Uh-huh.
of his attention to Reagan.
Okay.
When the assassination attempt happened, he was fixated on Reagan. Interestingly, we're not going to get into the gun control debate, but this is kind of when that became a bigger deal. It was already brewing because John Lennon was killed in 1980 with a
Okay.
handgun. So this is
Yep.
when the handgun stuff is hot. People are really starting to talk about that.
Yeah.
Hinckley was also found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Hmm.
He was put in St. Elizabeth's Hospital from 1982 to 2006, which again is like a criminally insane, like he was institutionalized.
Yeah.
Then they let him start spending more and more time at his mother's home. And in
Mhm.
2016, he was allowed to be with his mother full time under court supervision with mandatory psychiatric treatment.
Oh my gosh.
How would you like to be his psychiatrist? That would be very stressful.
Yeah. Or his
Um,
mom.
yeah, this is some hardcore stalking stuff.
Yeah, that's
You know,
wild.
I have so many questions. I want to know what meds he's on. I have so many questions, but that's the burden of proof. So because of this case, people were so upset that
Yeah.
he was found again insane and
Hmm.
wasn't made to stay in prison or worse, right? So this is when the burden of proof for an insanity plea shifted from the prosecution to the defense. So it used to be that the prosecution had to prove that the person was sane.
Hmm.
Now the defense has to prove that they're insane to use that plea. So it shifted, making it
Interesting. Okay.
harder to be legally insane.
Okay. Well, that's good.
So there you go, people. We've had assassination attempts before. And
Yeah.
as a country, we have come through it, right?
Yes. Yep.
Because presidents are made of some stern stuff.
Yes, most of them.
Yes.
Some of them, maybe not. So that brings us kind of to the heart piece of all of this,
Yep.
right? So the heart piece encompasses a few things for
Yep.
me. First off, circling back to the most current event with Trump
Mm-hmm.
and the man who was shot, Corey Compertor. He was a 50-year-old retired fire chief
Mm.
and just loved by his community. He was very involved in his church and was a humongous family guy. He had a wife, he was a girl dad, he was a brother, just salt of the earth type of human,
Mm.
right? Even like, I don't know if you've seen pictures of, I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
He just looks like one of those guys that you'd be like, we are just going to chill and
Oh, yeah.
have some tea. Like
He
that's
has
what
one of those faces. Like he just has an
sweet face.
approachability about him that you can just,
Yes.
it makes sense when people come
Yes.
out and say what a friendly person he was. He looked like a friendly person.
Yes. The super sad part about his death is that he died protecting his family. So
Mm,
he like jumped on top of them when he heard the shots and
mm,
then got shot himself. So super sad situation. A couple of the family members have come out with like, statements on social media about his character and who he is and just the support that they've been receiving. Both administrations have reached out
mm,
to offer their condolences. So just really, people have really crowded around and
mhm.
have done the best that they can to support their loss. Obviously, there's no amount of money or anything that can
No.
heal anything, but just trying to be the most helpful that they can be.
Well, and it really brings it back to the fact that we're all so vulnerable in this
Yes.
life, in this world, and we just love our people. Most of us would do anything to
Mhm.
protect the people that we love.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't have much information on the other two individuals who were shot, except that they're doing okay.
Hmm.
The other piece of this is we're human and we want to protect the people that we love,
Hmm.
right? And also how vulnerable we are, right?
Hmm.
As a nation, I think this has, and again, like you said, we've gone through this before. This isn't our first rodeo with
No.
chaotic
And I
political
only
stuff.
shared two examples. There's more.
There's more. So we can come together. I think the heart piece of this, and I said this a little bit before when you and I were talking, is both both parties, both sides have stated this is not a time to continue to be distant from each other, to be polarized, but to come together as a nation and to view each other as human beings and not
Mm-hmm.
people who believe in other things,
Mm.
and that being a reason to hurt or even try to kill or actually kill people.
Yeah, I think the whole thing just needs to chill the frick out a little bit. It's just too
Yes.
much.
Yes.
It's too much. And, we wanted to talk a little bit about how to care for ourselves in the middle
Yeah.
of all of this.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you're going to tell them about your chest pain and heart palpitations.
Yeah. So the other day, guys, I shouldn't laugh, but it's kind of funny. Yesterday, was it yesterday?
It was yesterday.
It was yesterday. See, all my days are blurring together.
I know. Time's
So
moving fast.
yesterday, I went on a run on my treadmill and I sometimes watch shows or watch the news while I run on my treadmill. So I was watching this thing on Hulu that was about the attempted assassination of Trump, and my run went great. But for the last couple days, I should say, backing up a little bit, I've had chest pain, like
Mm.
in over my heart, not like in the middle of my chest.
No, it's like the left side of your chest. It's where your heart.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
I know. So, yeah, so I was having like something going on with my potential heart yesterday. It could be muscular, who knows?
Yeah.
But I think, it's important for us to be mindful of how are we taking care of ourselves in situations that we have zero control in, right?
Well,
How do
because
we?
part of what led up to your chest pain was running 3 miles on a treadmill watching the news.
Well, yeah, I know.
Your poor little heart.
I know. I could have probably ran without the news and I would have been fine.
Probably.
It was
Don't worry, we're going to
probably.
get her checked out medically. But we wanted to make the point that this is
Mhm.
very stressful.
It
Election
is.
season is anyway. I'm already anticipating just a hellish landscape from now until the end of January. Even my
Yeah.
optimistic self, I just already know it's going to be a
It's
little
just
bit
going to be
miserable.
spicy.
So I'm already thinking, like, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of the people that we love? How do
Mhm.
we manage in this time? And I'm hoping things will calm down a little bit after this. Maybe the rhetoric will die down a little bit. But Nat, how can we? You are my mind and movement girl. You are
Yes.
always thinking about the self-care
Yes.
pieces. What can we do?
That's such a good question. I think part of this is honestly, like it starts with being able to identify what are the things that are in my control in a world where it feels like so many things are out of our control,
Mhm.
right? And I think when it comes to the political world, it does feel like there's so many things that are out of our control. And then things like this happen and it exacerbates that, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
It enhances that, it magnifies all of those feelings. And so I think step one is identifying, okay, what are the things that are in my control? Well, one of the many things that are in my control is how do I take care of myself,
Yeah.
right? And so I have a little list here for all of our listeners, and this is just what helps me and things that
Yeah.
I've heard that people have used. I love exercise. I'm a big advocate of movement and endorphins and dopamine and all the natural ways to get those feel good chemicals in our brain. So, exercise is really, really important. I think just any type of movement, and that can look different for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but just making sure you're getting some movement in, getting your body going, getting those happy chemicals going in your body. I love being outside, especially when it's not smoky. It's really smoky right now because of fires in Montana, I think. But
Yeah.
I love being outside, being able to use, honestly, this sounds kind of cheesy, but all my therapist friends will love it.
Oh yeah.
Use all of our senses, right? Like, what are you
Uh-huh.
feeling? What do you smell? Right? Like, literally go if some of my family members are big gardeners, right? Like, go smell the flowers that you've planted.
Yeah.
Go touch the petals. Go, sit outside and just think about what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? And honestly, being around the people you love,
Hmm.
like really embracing time with the people that you care about and embrace that, right? Step away from the phones. Our husbands gave us crap a few weeks ago about how our phones we can be, but
Absolutely.
stepping away from the media and social media and constant access to life outside and connect with
Mm.
the people who are close to you. So those are just some of the ways that I think are really helpful to cope with things that we just don't have control of and that create anxiety and stress and
Mm.
isolation and all of those things, right? We have to be mindful that we're not falling into those things because it's really easy to do when we feel the weight of the world, you know?
Absolutely. And if what Natalie's sharing feels too hippy dippy for you, let me give you a couple more. An Americano, preferably half calf or decaf.
See,
If
I'm
it's after
thinking
10 or 11,
that might make my heart palpitations worse right now. So that's why
100%.
I didn't go that direction.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
love a good Americano.
I need something warm, just a
Yes.
little bit of caffeine, not a lot, just
Yes.
enough to focus me up a little bit. And
I
then
mean, I need that. I literally came to work today and was like, okay, don't have caffeine. I got to work and I was like, I have to have at least 1 cup
have
because my
to,
brain doesn't work.
have to, maybe no pre-workout for a little bit, but I
Yeah, I
think
did not take any of
probably
that.
a good girl. Also, watching something funny or
Yes.
heartfelt, get away from doom scrolling. My husband accuses me of doom scrolling, and he's not wrong. But something funny. I'm watching Unprisoned on Hulu. It is like the best show
Oh,
ever. You would love it. It's Kerry Washington
okay.
plays a therapist who has a broken
Okay.
people picker, right? So she dates like emotionally unavailable people and stuff. But her
Okay.
father gets out of prison and moves in with the family. So it's all this like family dynamics and relationship dynamics, but it's funny, it's light, it's
Good. Okay.
also deep and wonderful all at the same
I
time.
love that.
You know,
I need funny and light. I just looked to see what am I watching? I'm watching Dark Side of the 90s.
oh, Natalie, we need
Ah.
to take a break from true crime. This is our commitment to each other. Tonight, at least, we're going to give
Mhm.
true crime a break and we are going to just watch something funny, mellow, heartwarming, some vintage Schitt's Creek, maybe Friends. We can go real vintage.
Okay, I could go with friends.
Something familiar, predictable,
Hmm.
and we're going to wear our comfort sweats. I have my pink sweatpants on, living my best life.
I already have it all on. I have my shorts and my sweatshirt.
I love that so much.
I know. I have it
And
all
we're
on. I
just
have
we're gonna
my
hunker
light
down.
hug. This is like a light hug.
It's like a hug. I got my pink pants on. I'm happy as a clam. So
Yes.
what we're gonna do, you guys, is we are going to get through together because that is what we do.
That's what we have to do.
That's what we have to do. But again, we love you guys. Thank you so much for the support and the everything we said in the top of the episode. It's all still true. And I hope that you were able to think about this a little bit, but maybe get a little bit of a distraction and also a reminder that we've survived this before. We will survive it again.
I am so thankful for you, Janine, and for all of our fans.
Thank you guys. We care about you. Be safe, be well, and we will see you next time.
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.